Welcome to the Amagi. It's time for another Avatar Answers video. In this video, we're going to talk about one of the arguably coolest powers in the Avatar universe, Seismic Sense, its reach, limitations, and varieties. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. This ability was first introduced in the Book 2 episode, The Blind Bandit, in Avatar: The Last Airbender, and was used by Toph Beifong, a blind earthbender, who made up for her blindness by relying on the vibrations in the earth to detect the movements around her.
I see with earthbending. It's kind of like seeing with my feet. I feel the vibrations in the earth, and I can see where everything is.
However, this ability's history traces back far longer, to the badger moles to be exact. Said to be the original earthbenders, badger moles are blind animals who traverse the earth by extending their senses and communicating with the world thanks to their unique ability. Even though it was Toph who really made something out of this ability, a few centuries prior to her, other powerful earthbenders like Earth Sage Jianzhu and his disciple Yoon, both contemporaries of Avatar Kyoshi, made use of this technique too. Toph would later go on to teach this technique to Aang and later to her daughters, who use the technique in battle more often than not, rather than using it as a means of communication. Of course, as with any ability, there's bound to be limitations. For users of Seismic Sense, which is reserved for earthbenders, their element's natural requirement is to be connected to the Earth in order to pick up on objects or people that must share the same mass of Earth for vibrations to pass through.
Your powers of perception are frightening.
Should we leave?
Better safe than sorry.
In the case of airborne objects aimed at a Seismic Sense user, they have to be detected by sheer estimation of the object's flight path based on the launcher's stance on an earthen surface. In cases where a blind earthbender attempts to initiate an attack from the ground to an airborne person or object, they are reliant on others' directions, which can then either result in hit or miss.
Toph, shoot a rock right there. Fire!
Yeah, you got it! She got it, right?
However, if the user is in the air or water, or even standing on a non-earth solid such as ice or wood, the bender will be unable to sense anything through that substance.
My little island where I can see.
This also goes for standing in sand, which renders the user's sight fuzzy. Although allowing the user to detect their surroundings in detail, the subskill does not allow for perception of facial features or written characters, due to the fact that they are not made of or in contact with Earth.
I'd return the compliment, but I have no idea what you look like.
If the user is deeply tuned in to their environment, Seismic Sense can also be used for lie detection by picking up on physiological changes of a person, such as a heightened pulse.
And stick to the truth. I'll be able to tell if you're lying.
As powerful as this sounds, it's just as easy to be fooled by others as this scene showcases.
I am a 400-foot-tall purple platypus bear with pink horns and silver wings.
Okay, you're good, I admit it.
If someone is brainwashed and thus believes what they're saying to be true, false claims will not trigger any physical reaction.
When people lie, there's a physical reaction. He's telling the truth.
An earthbender must also be actively on the lookout for reactions for it to be noticed. Earthbenders who use this ability for detecting lies, like Toph and Aiwei, are hence referred to as truthseers. Lastly, the use of Seismic Sense allowed Toph to discover the art of metalbending, enabling her to pick up on the unpurified earth particles in the metal, which she subsequently bent, and by proxy the metal as well. But one question remains: is this ability really reserved for earthbenders only, or are there equivalents to be found in the other bending arts? There are signs of airbenders making use of the air in a similar way to how Seismic Sense users use the earth to accomplish the same goal. The first time we encounter this is in the episode Turning the Tides in Book 1 of The Legend of Korra. Here, a group of Equalists in disguise wait for Tenzin to arrive on the roof of City Hall. As he passes them with his back turned to them, they attack him with electrified discs, which Tenzin just narrowly avoids before gaining the upper hand. As is shown clearly, Tenzin is able to pick up on the electric vibrations which are in the air and also make his beard vibrate, a telltale sign of the incoming attack. This becomes relevant again later in the Book 3 episode, Original Airbenders, when one of the Airbender recruits, Daw, is able to feel the wind coming from a fired net from behind and dodges it. What's noticeable is that Daw's facial hair does not vibrate like Tenzin's previously did, but instead it's shown how the vibration in the air makes contact with Daw's bald head, which he reacts to. As for the other elements, well, just like air and earth, water is also known to carry vibrations, allowing for aquatic creatures like dolphins to communicate with each other via ultrasound. Does this mean that waterbenders can do the same underwater? And what about firebenders? Unlike water, fire isn't known to carry vibrations, so it seems unlikely for firebenders to have their own version of the seismic sense. However, as told in the Kyoshi novels, firebenders are able to regulate a room's temperature and possess an inner fire which they rely on for survival. Experienced firebenders are also able to trace energy paths in someone's body and detect spiritual energy within an individual, like the shaman did with Korra, thereby being able to read a person's body similarly to how waterbender healers and users of seismic sense do. As already mentioned, waterbenders have different methods of reading bodies, sometimes overlapping with those of earth and firebenders. As for detecting objects and people in water, it doesn't seem too far off. The power of bloodbending assumes that a person's or animal's blood vessels can be manipulated. Another technique that was introduced in the Shadow of Kyoshi by a healer named Atuat expanded this to internal organs which can be regulated in temperature. With that being said, in theory, waterbenders should be able to detect animals and people underwater because they're naturally made up of water to some part. However, a waterbender would need to be close to the source in order for this to work, just like an earthbender. Then again, there is one scene that seems to speak against this. When Team Avatar decides to cross the Serpent's Pass underwater, Aang and Katara create a protective, isolating bubble of water, which everyone can breathe and walk in as if they were on the surface. As we know, the surrounding water is inhabited by the sea serpent, which doesn't take long to announce its presence, and forces the team to resurface shortly after. This raises the question as to why neither Katara nor Aang, two powerful waterbenders in their own right, didn't pick up on the serpent's presence. Toph had no way of detecting the serpent because it only traveled through water and not on the sea's bed which Toph was walking on. But what about potential overlaps? Could airbenders detect sound waves or vibrations underwater, considering that water itself is made up of oxygen molecules? This is where things become tricky because mixing fantasy elements and science together never does give you a straight answer. In theory, it might work, but for now we are left to speculate until we receive confirmation in the future. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.